So looking at question 1, scanning it top to bottom, we see a few if-else statements. So let's just mark those up to make it easier to distinguish them when we're going through the problem. The first if statement is right here, and it ends right here after we see the else. The next one starts here with if, and it ends with an else if statement. The second one doesn't have an else, and that's okay. The else is optional. So now going through this code line by line, we see that we start off with two variables, a true count and a false count, and both of them are initialized to 0. Now we could start with our first if statement, and it says if false. And a lot of students get tripped up when they see this word false over here, and they're not sure what it means or what they should do with it. And the best way to think about it is to say this. Imagine we had the statement if 3 is equal to 2. Well, that's a really simple Boolean expression, and we know that 3 equals 2 simplifies to false. So whatever code might have been here is code that we would not execute. And this is no different. The same way 3 is equal to 2 simplifies to just simply false, we could just put the word false there. So anytime you see the word false or true, you want to treat it the same way you would see and treat any other Boolean expression. So knowing that, we could look at this first statement, if false. Well, we're not going to do that because it's false. That means we jump straight to our else statement. And else has no condition we have to check. So we could just go ahead and do true count plus equals 2. So we're adding 2 to our value of true count, which was 0. So true count turns into 2, and same with false count. Now we can move on to our next if statement. Now this one has a little bit more complex logic. It's saying if true and false. Now writing it on the side just to break it down. True and false. With and, we have to make sure that the expression on the left and the expression on the right are both true for this whole expression to be true. And since on the left we have false, then we know this whole thing is all false. And so we will not be executing what's inside this if statement. Going to the next one, which is elif. And that's the next check inside this if statement. This one has the same similar expression, but a little bit different, and it adds this word not. And so we know this simplifies to false. So we're doing not false. And not essentially means just take the opposite of it. So the opposite of false is true. So this expression is all true. And so we are going to execute the code that's inside of it. So that's adding 4 to the value of true count. So true count will now be 6. And false count, we're adding 0 to the value of false count. So false count will remain at 2. Finally, we're going to print true count and false count. And that's the output we see here. We get 6 and 2.